A leisurely stroll down the fresh food section of a supermarket or the frozen food section will quickly highlight how expensive food has got. If you want a real good wake-up call, then go and have a look at the berries. Fresh berries are immensely expensive and also quite hard to find. Frozen berries, a lot easier to find, but still incredibly expensive, especially if you're looking at using quite a lot of them. Yet, they're one of the easiest plants to grow that, on a single cane in front of me, gives an abundance of fruit that really is unmatched to anything that you can get in the supermarket. So why don't we grow more berries? I believe it's because we just don't know how to grow them, and there is a little bit of science behind it that a lot of people get wrong. A lot of advice that I see given on Facebook groups, on online forums, is just wrong, which means year after year after year, the harvests are tiny and people tend to not even get harvests. So, today's video is all about this one in front of me, blackberries. I'm going to do a very similar video on raspberries because raspberries grow slightly different, but very much the same. But I want to make sure that you have a reference to each so that you don't need to filter through chapters and all of that. So today's video is all about blackberries. What we're going to cover in this video is how do they grow? What are the types of growth? How do they fruit? How do you prune them? And then where does your fruit appear? If you know these basics, then you are going to be able to grow huge amounts of blackberries that you can eat fresh, put into your breakfasts, put into your desserts, freeze for smoothies, whatever you want to. They are filled with an immense amount of goodness, nutrients, antioxidants, all the good stuff your body needs. So after this video, you better be wandering out to your nursery and getting yourself one. So to get straight into the meat of it, how do blackberries grow? It's a bramble, which means they just continuously grow. They'll send out very, very long limbs if you don't control them properly, which we'll fast forward a little bit later into the pruning section. They grow in two ways. You get annual brambles and biannual brambles. What that means is plants that fruit on this year's growth, being your annuals, and plants that fruit on second year growth, your biannuals. Now when it comes to blackberries, not raspberries, blackberries tend to mostly be biannuals. Now I'm purposely not using technical terms yet, just so that we can get to understand things. So what that means is every second year's growth, your blackberries will put out flashes of growth everywhere. Everywhere, I mean, if you have a single cane, every single node along that cane is going to shoot out a side branch, and on the tips of those side branches, you're going to get clusters of blackberries. So you can imagine if you have a 2-meter cane that goes up, you can have 2 meters of branches with clusters. If you have 5 or 6 canes, you can imagine the numbers increase significantly. So what that means is you need to know firstly what variety you have and if it's an annual or biannual. Now, let's get into some more of the technical details, which you'd probably hear thrown around quite often with blackberries and other brambles. And that is primocanes and floricanes. Your primocane is your first year's growth. Now if we have a look at this plant in front of me, that would be this new piece of growth that's coming out from the base of the plant. This one is going to continue to grow throughout the whole of summer, and it is going to get longer and longer and longer. And this is where people make the mistake. Just the other day, I saw someone post a picture of a beautiful long cane, new growth, a primocane, and they saw this big thing shoot up. They really worried, what must they do? Every single comment said, cut it down, it's pulling energy away from berry production. And I was like, oh my goodness, this person's not going to have a harvest next year. So you'll see when I bring you in close that this primocane, or the annual growth, first year's growth, has absolutely no side branches. And on the tips of this new growth, there is a leader. That leader is going to continue to grow. you might, at the end of the season, get a little cluster of berries at the top. But what you want to do going to pruning is you want to tip that later on, but I don't want to get into that to confuse you. So that is your annual growth. It's going to continue to grow. Now, right next to this one over here, we have a floricane. Your floricane is 1-year-old cane. So last year, spring and summer, this cane over here looked like this one. It started off small, it went up, and it was tipped up at the top here. So it was probably past the camera, probably about 1.5 meters tall. It was cut smaller. The smaller the cutting stimulates auxins and hormones to send out side branches. But now you can see how this one has just exploded with side growth. If I took those people's advice and I pruned out this primo cane, first year's growth, I wouldn't have got any of these berries. And what happens is this is where people tend to lose the plot with growing, especially blackberries and other brambles, is they don't understand the growing cycles and the fruiting cycles. I can give you an extreme example, and I will put footage in so that you can see. I have a local nursery that I absolutely love, and I'm there all the time. They have this beautiful blackberry in a big pot, and it's a big plant. It's been producing a lot of blackberries. People go in and they eat them when they're in the nursery. It's pretty cool. This year winter, I got there and they cut it flat to the ground. I was horrified, and I went to the guy that I know there quite well, and I was like, what happened to the blackberry? They said, no, they just did the winter pruning. That's what you need to do with blackberries. And I had a little chat to him. I was like, do you know what primo canes and floricanes are first year, second year growth, that their fruits aren't second year growth? And he said, no, their fruits are new growth. And I was like, no, blackberries don't. Some raspberries, actually most raspberries do. Blackberries don't. So the footage you're about to see now is what the plant looks like now. You can see there's huge growth. It's beautiful. It's healthy. Like I said, it was an amazing plant. Zero, absolutely zero fruit. Why? Because they removed all of the canes, the old canes and the new canes. Now they're going to have to wait until next summer for the current year's beautiful growth that you saw to now put out side branches and fruit. And this is, my friends, where things go wrong. So, primo canes, floricanes. How I like to understand it and reference it, because it can get confusing, is pretty simple. Primo canes, primates. They were there first. So without the primates, we can't do anything. The primates turn into flowers. It's a bit bizarre, but it makes sense in my mind. Floricanes are flowers. Flowers are fruit. So, primates. Let the primates go. Your primates are going to turn into flowers. The flowers are going to give you the fruit. If you remove the primates, they're not going to go and get you flowers. So, let your primates go, and at the end of the day, they're going to collect you flowers. Those flowers are going to get you fruit. Once your floricane has produced, so this one in front of me, in winter, I'm going to prune at the base this floricane away. So then what's going to happen is this primo cane is going to take over next year's growth. And you can get multiple floricanes and primo canes in the same pot. This is a relatively young plant, so I'm only getting 1 or 2 side shoots at the moment. But in 2 or 3 years, this pot is going to be full of canes, and I'm going to have to selectively prune them. So that's going to come in pruning. Long story short, annual, biannual. Annual, primo canes, biannual, floricanes. Primo canes, new growth, set the foundation for your flowers and fruit on your floricanes. Don't prune your primo canes, because then you won't get floricanes. Lots of cane wording, lots of things going on related to canes, but as long as you understand that principle, you will forever know how to grow blackberries, how to prune them, and what you need to look for to maximize the growth and fruit potential on each of your plants. Before we get into pruning, let's look at how they fruit. Like I mentioned with the primo canes and floricanes, They grow on the second year growth, but very importantly, they don't grow on the stem. If you look at in comparison to raspberries, you can get raspberries quite often that on the actual stem, they will flower. They will continue to flower and fruit, and then they'll continue to grow and grow. So you actually get fruit along the stem. Blackberries, you don't. All blackberry fruit is produced on side shoots. All of these, I'm going to show you up close. Every single node where you can get a side shoot on this floricane has sent out a side shoot. And that is why at the end of the season you end up pruning your floricane away, because all of your side shoots have now produced. There is obviously the potential that you can leave the side shoots to then get side shoots and continue growing, but they're not as productive as these first year side shoots. So you're rather going to prune it down and get a continuous cycle of fresh floricanes that are going to send out side shoots. They also don't produce berries along the side shoots. So here is quite a, where's one? Here's quite a long one. It's about 30 centimeters long at the bottom. At the base, there's 1, 2, 3 nodes, and none of these nodes have fruit. The fruit is at the tip of the side shoot as a cluster. So along here, there's a cluster there, and you can see all along the ends, there are clusters of berries. Why is this important? Because another piece of pro advice is on your side shoots, you need to tip prune them to stimulate growth on the inside. Bad idea, because what you are doing, like pruning away your primo canes, is you're pruning away your fruit production on the tips. So when it comes to how blackberries grow and produce fruit, just remember, they produce fruit on floricanes, second year growth. They produce fruit on side branches or side shoots, and they produce fruit on the tips of side branches. The only form of pruning you're going to do is your tip at the very top of your primo cane. What that's going to do, like I said, is stimulate side branching for the following year. So now that we know how to grow it, let's look at some of the pruning techniques. I've already dropped quite a few little hints here and there on how to prune them, but let's cover it in a bit more detail. Along with incorrect pruning of primo canes, floricanes, all of the canes, is the timing. A lot of people get this wrong. As per the example I shared where someone posted a picture of this beautiful primo cane that was huge, taking over, and they were worried about it. The advice was to cut it away so that you don't take energy away from berry production. Now, in some plants, that makes sense, and it's something you need to do, not with blackberries. If you prune this plant in summer, you're removing all your growth, all your future fruiting opportunity. So you need to prune blackberries in the autumn or the winter. Basically, once they've lost their leaves, they will go dormant, so they'll lose their leaves, and then next year in the spring, when they warm up, come out of hibernation, you'll see all these beautiful little shoots coming out of the stem of the plant with the new growth. But they will lose their leaves, and once they've lost their leaves, you would then come in and you would prune away the old growth, and you would select the new growth. So there's 2 ways that you need to prune your blackberries. Let's go into the types of growth first. First year growth, or your primo canes, are going to be very light colored. They're going to be green, and towards the end of the season, they're going to be green to brown. As they go towards winter, they're going to harden off, and they're going to have a bit more wood in them, and they're going to be a browner color. Your floricanes, see, even I get my confused, so don't worry if you do too. My floricane is going to have more of a silver color, so it's going to be brown heading into silver. And by the end of this summer season, once it's produced, it will be completely silver. Not necessarily silver, but much lighter. You will very clearly see the difference between a brown primo cane and a more silver, lighter floricane. Which means come winter, autumn, when you need to prune, you're going to prune by color. You're going to prune away all of your light and silver canes, because that's going to be all your floricanes that should have given you a huge amount of fruit in the current year. So those are the ones you're going to cut all of them away. Your primo canes, or your light brown ones, slightly green to brown ones, these ones you want to selectively prune. What you don't want is a pot full of canes, because then you are going to weaken the plant and they're not going to have as much fruit on each of your canes. So if you're looking at a size of the pot that I have, which is roughly the size of what you would take in a bed of the space, in any case, you would plant them about 0.5 meter to 1 meter apart each plant. You want to do no more than 5. I ideally go for 3. So 3 to 5 new canes per plant. I can show you on the raspberry where I've got 5. That one is quite happy, and it's created a nice vase where you can then stake them up and create a vase shape like that with the stakes, and then the fruit is on the edge and it falls down really nicely. If you have, let's say, 10 or 15 canes, you have to go and select the strongest ones. Prune out the weakest ones at the base, but also, bonus tip, if you go a little bit under the surface of the soil, you can see if that little branch has rooted. More often than not, it's provided a shoot underground and it'll have roots on it. So if you cut it a little bit closer to the base, you can actually take that plant with the root and create a new one. So you can have it in a new pot, in a new bed, and you can propagate your own. You can also do that via cuttings, but that's a whole new story and a whole new video. So you want to prune your primo canes, this year's growth, selectively prune them to no more than 3 to 5 canes maximum in a pot or in a bed per plant. That would then go up and you would need to stake them for the next year. Then the other thing is pruning to stimulate subsequent growth. Now when you look at your primo cane will continue to grow throughout the whole of summer, and it would go. Some of them can reach 3.5 meters. They can get really big. If you have a sprawling variety, this is a very upright one, so I don't have issues with this one continuously wanting to fall and bramble all over the floor. It's going to continue to grow up. Now, when you tip prune a primo cane, remember you don't want to tip prune floricanes, because then you're going to lose your fruit production. Your primo cane you do, and you want to tip prune your primo cane at the point that you want it to be. And that is ideally around the height that you want to be able to reach your fruit. This you do middle to end of summer. You don't want to do this too early in the year while it is actively still growing aggressively, because you don't want to stimulate the side growth within the current year and then you get a whole bunch of growth, and then the next year spring it's confused whether it should put in side branches or side branches on the side branches. So you want to do this as it's busy weaning down from its active growing season towards the end of summer. Tip prune it, you'd set your height, and then you are also resetting some of the growth hormones, and you are sending the auxins down into the plant and sending them into those buds that are all along the stem. Next year when it wakes up, that tip prune that you did would have stimulated the buds to all just explode with growth like we have all along the stem here. And then there you go, you have a cane full of blackberries. And that, friends, is the be all and end all of growing blackberries. I hope this video helps contextualize how they grow, what the canes are, what the cycle is, so that you don't get advice that tells you to just prune out all this aggressive growth and then you end up pulling your blackberry out because you don't get any fruit from it. Blackberries should produce fruit immediately. You shouldn't have to wait 3 to 4 years. So if you're not getting blackberries, you're probably pruning it wrong. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got value out of watching this video, and the next one I will do will be on raspberries, because let's be honest, they are probably the most tasty fruit out there. It's my favorite fruit, my favorite berry by far, probably my favorite tasting fruit. I absolutely love raspberries. So that's next, and it's quite a bit different in terms of how they grow, with more option and variation. So know your variety of blackberry, go out and get a blackberry so that you can enjoy all the wholesome goodness that they have to offer.